One of the things which I think I am truly fortunate, and I think as any of us who have businesses will say this, it takes a great support staff if you're going to be able to be a creative person. I've been so blessed and fortunate to have family. My mom has always worked with me. My son, from the time he was really small, knew the right way to dress a bed out. His little friends would come over and they thought Kevin had hundreds of pillows on his bed. But he just had 3 Euros, 2 standards, 4 bed pillows, and 6 decorative pillows. But for them, that totally seemed like hundreds of pillows. My daughter works in the business. In fact, you see the scarves up on the mannequin. That's a design that she came up with. And it's my hope that at some point she would actually come into the business. It was so funny when she started preschool. The teachers marveled at her dexterity for such a small child. She was 3 when she started, 3 or 4. And what they didn't know, that to keep her entertained, because she was the one that would want to run around the workroom, we'd sit her up on a cutting table with a pair of scissors, a stack of fabric, and a magic marker, and some masking tape. And she would emulate what she saw the cutters doing. So that would usually give us, 15 or 20 minutes of a little peace and quiet. So it certainly served her well as she started school. Now, what you're seeing some shots of now, and this is our workroom. Again, you see we're continually, everything is so hands-on. Taylor spends a lot of time at the office. My son doesn't as much now that he's in college. But what you don't realize is when you make a pillow like this, there were probably 8 hands touch that. When you go to make a piece of furniture, there are 10 or 12 different sets of hands have touched something. And I think that's something that we had so lost sight of in this country as we allowed so much of our production to go offshore is, making things here in this country, it's very labor intensive, but we can produce things that are amazing that no one else can. One of the pictures you see up here now, this is my great group of girlfriends. It's so important to have good friends, and I have a wonderful group of girls that we all ride horses together and fox hunt, and so it's just been, you need to have that when you've got to have friends to go to. When I had an accountant walk out, like without a day's notice, I had a couple of girlfriends ready to come in and help until we could find somebody, so that's definitely made it enjoyable. And to have a staff that can create absolutely anything that you come up with. We've got a rule at the office. I always become the most creative right before we go to market. So the rule is when the truck leaves with all of our product to go to New York or to Atlanta, I have to quit designing because I will run them ragged the last 2 weeks as we're getting ready to go to market. But it's been fun. I can't imagine doing anything other than making product made here in this country. I do have kind of some philosophies I'd like to share with y'all, and then I'll open it up if anybody has any questions for me. I think, you need to be passionate, and I've heard some of the other speakers this morning talk about that. You've got to love what you're doing. One of the things I think that's important, don't let your lack of knowledge stop you from doing something. I've never known how to do anything that I've done business-wise, but what I did know how to do is surround myself with people that knew how to do it. As soon as my dad told me we couldn't renovate that house, that was a mission for me to see how quick I could get it done. When someone says you can't produce product in the U.S., I'm going to show you. So I've always used that kind of as my motivation on that. One of the other ones is don't overthink a creative idea. I think Lula and I probably share a lot of the same philosophies on that. You have no idea how many things I've tried that they don't fail, they just don't work. So, if you feel strongly about it, you just have to go for it. If I had kept this idea to reproduce this fabric to myself, look at all these people that would have never been put back to work. So if you feel strong and you think you might have an idea, you just need to go for it. One of my other favorites, which I've got a funny story to share you, I don't know how many of y'all have children you've just sent to college or getting ready to send to college. Do I see hands out there, anybody? Okay. I've got a son that if I had not done his college applications, we were never going to go to college. Now, your counselors at school tell you, don't do that. You need to let them do it. Well, Kevin would still be at home and probably be at home until he's 35. So one Sunday morning early, as I'm waiting to get essays from him so I can help him with his essays, or with his applications, I decided to write 4 or 5 essays that would answer most questions that would be on an application. Well, my favorite one was, who is your favorite person and what inspiration have they shared? Of course, since I was writing them, I said, that's me. And the inspirational message was, blossom where you're planted. Well, when Kevin read these after I'd already sent his applications in, he said, Mother, that sounds like it was written by a 50-year-old. I said, because it was. So anyway, that is one of my favorite quotes, blossom where you're planted. I have never, I've tried to be resourceful wherever I am. Yeah, I found myself in North Carolina without a job and 2 children and decided I would try to make the best of where I was. And I learned a whole new skill set that I never knew I could have. Another one of my favorites, and I love to look back on life, and I'm sure all of us do when we get to be about 50, you start to reflect on your life. It's interesting the direction that your life takes and how meeting one person can completely change the course of your life. And I think that's, I never would have imagined as a child coming up to visit my grandparents in High Point, North Carolina, that I would have a business that I actually am running out of there, that I make upholstery furniture that I knew nothing about. And it's just that one meeting with one person can completely change the direction. So I think that's what makes that whole journey of life just incredibly interesting for all of us. One of the things which I came from a very agrarian background. My mom's family were tobacco farmers. They had a dairy farm. And when you came from an agrarian lifestyle, the people that worked with you became your family. And I think that's something we had really lost sight of in this country is turning the folks you work with into family. And I think that's such an important lesson. We've got a great group of folks that we work with. We celebrate everybody's birthday with a birthday cake. As soon as it gets cold, which we had a cold snap when we started, but then it got hot again, we do Soup Wednesdays, where it used to be one person would bring a soup in. Now it takes 2 or 3 to feed the number of people that we have. And we'll take turns doing that. And we try to create family, because if you're there and you're spending that much time there, you should really enjoy the people that you work with. Another one of my favorites is no idea is too small. And again, I can't stress enough how many of y'all out there have a really great idea that maybe you think is too small. And here's something just to reproduce a fabric that now has kind of started a movement in our part of the country of putting people back to work. So don't think what you're doing could be insignificant, because you have no idea how that can affect and change so many different people's lives. And the other one for me is stay true to your ideals. It's very tempting at this point to maybe say, I like the idea of doing it here, but I'm going to take everything offshore. And I set out to have a company that was going to produce product that was made in the U.S., and I've tried to stay very true and very firm to those ideals. Thanks. And I think, and this is one of my other favorite quotes, and a gentleman who had lived here in Atlanta, worked for Oxford Industries, which was oddly enough, textiles, shared this with me, and he said, the good you do unto others comes back to you tenfold. And there's a huge, I think, lesson for all of us in that. And, I'm not so interested in making money. My point was to put people back to work. And I think by doing that, we're seeing the success. We've seen a movement in this country in the last year and a half that people care about where things are made. We're looking to see that things are made here in America. And I think by those of us who are trying to do that, we're going to start to see more and more Americans being able to be put back to work. So thank y'all so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I think we had left some time possibly for questions. If anybody has any questions they want to ask, certainly if you're shy and you don't want to do it while I'm standing up here, I will be over in our space. We do have a sampling of all the products here over in the gift boutique, and would love to speak with anybody there. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah, I think we've got Andy walking around with a microphone. Okay, that's perfect. There you go. It is. What we've done, and one of the things I love so much about the old fabric.
Let's repeat the question. Nobody heard the question. Sorry.
This is the question. Okay, go ahead, ask again.
I just wondered if it was washable and dryable.
Exactly. And one of the things that was so important when I was working with those 2 textile engineers that helped me engineer this, one of the things I loved about the old fabrics is the more you wash it, the softer it gets. So when we created the fabric, that was one of the first things, was that this needs to be a fabric that the more you use it, the softer the fabric's going to become. And in fact, the tabletop we love so much, because the more you wash that, it just gets softer and softer. So that was definitely key for us. No, everything we do is pre-shrunk. So the Brussels fabric has actually been washed ahead of time. So those goods we're working with actually shrink down from 54, 55 inches down to about 52. Any other questions?
We have another one.
Okay.
If all you had was a small idea, how did you go from that to a business plan to be able to sell it to someone?
Well, and I think I could probably share this with Lulu. I don't read directions and I don't do business plans. So I've been fortunate, and I start everything on a shoestring. You know, I think if I'd gone to a bank with an idea that, you know, I said, I've got this great idea for a fabric that I've seen it at flea markets, I'm going to reproduce it, and I'm going to make a business, they probably would have laughed at me. You know, I didn't meet the criteria to actually start up a business. But I think the one thing that anybody with an idea, if you have passion and you care about it and you're resourceful, and I think the passion and being resourceful are the two things that have allowed me to start a business. You know, and again, it's just, I think starting small, I think coming out with $2,000 of a plan maybe can, you know, not make you succeed. But for me, it's just been, if you feel strongly enough about it, you are going to figure out a way to get it done. And I think, again, for me, it's been surrounding myself with family who are always so willing to help, surrounding myself with people who know how to do what I want to do. One of the funniest things with me, and my sweet grandmother, who passed away before I opened up Clover Home, she would have asked the same thing the whole family did when I opened up the first restaurant. Why would Debbie want a restaurant? She can't cook. Well, when I did Clover, why would Debbie want to have a business that you sew? My mom had at least taught me how to hem, kind of, and I could sew buttons on. But that was the extent of my sewing. But I did surround myself with people that know how. So I think, you know, it's not just doing it yourself. You've got to include other people in what you're doing. Any other questions? Well, y'all, thank you so much. I so appreciate, you know, anytime I have an opportunity to come out and speak.
Isn't she great? I love the Made in America. I think that's one of the most wonderful things. And as a country, I'd like to see us return to that. Putting our people back to work, doing great things.